The scent of damp earth fills your lungs as you crouch at the cave mouth. If you're watching this journey through Rome's earliest days, hit like and subscribe, and tell me, where are you watching from? Now, let's step back to a time when this land knew no city, no empire, no name at all. You're standing in Latium, the coastal plain of central Italy, roughly 40,000 years ago. The world is colder than you know it. Ice sheets grip the north. The Mediterranean coastline stretches farther out than it will in your time. The Tiber River, which will one day flow through Rome's heart, carves a different path through wider, wilder valleys. You're not alone here. Small bands of Paleolithic hunters move through these hills. They're Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans like you. They track deer, wild boar, and aurochs, massive wild cattle with horns as long as your arm. They know every animal path, every water source, every shelter. The caves matter most. You duck inside one now, your eyes adjusting to the gloom. The rock walls still hold warmth from the day. These aren't permanent homes. Your group moves with the seasons, following herds, gathering plants, seeking better hunting grounds. But you return to these caves again and again. They offer protection from predators, from storms, from the bitter winds that sweep down from the mountains. You strike two stones together. Sparks fly. Within moments, a small fire crackles to life. The smoke drifts up toward the cave ceiling, blackening the rock. Thousands of years from now, archaeologists will find these scorch marks. They'll find your stone tools too, hand axes, scrapers, blades chipped from flint. They'll piece together your existence from what you leave behind. Outside, darkness settles over the 7 hills that will one day cradle Rome. You don't know their names yet. The Palatine, the Capitoline, the Aventine. They're just high ground to you, places to spot prey from a distance. You chew dried meat and watch the fire. Tomorrow, you'll hunt again. The land provides, but never easily. Every day is survival. Every choice matters. The flames cast dancing shadows on the cave wall. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls. The warmth of smoke from the hearth fills your lungs as you wake inside a mud brick hut. You're no longer a wandering hunter. The world has changed, and so have you. Around 6000 BCE, people in the hills near what will become Rome stop following animal herds. They plant seeds instead. Emmer wheat and barley push through the soil. Lentils and peas grow in careful rows. You don't chase food anymore. You grow it. Your hands shape wet clay into round pots. You dry them in the sun, then bake them over fire. These vessels hold grain through winter. They keep your family alive when snow covers the ground. You live in a small village now. Maybe 20 families share this hillside. The huts cluster together, their roofs made of thatch and branches. Smoke rises from each home at dawn. Children play between the houses while dogs bark and chase them. Outside the village, you clear forest with stone axes. The work makes your shoulders ache. You burn the stumps and dig the earth with wooden tools. Sheep and goats graze nearby. You know each animal by sight. They give you milk, wool, and meat. If you like what you're watching, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. Now, let's keep going. The dead rest in simple graves beyond the fields. You place pottery and tools beside them. Perhaps they'll need these things in the next world. You don't know for certain, but it feels right. Trade begins to connect your village to others. Obsidian from distant volcanoes appears in your settlement. Someone walked many days to bring that black glass here. You use it to make sharp blades that cut better than any stone. Seasons pass into generations. Your children's children build more huts. The village grows larger. The forest retreats as farmland spreads across the hills. You stand at the edge of your wheat field one evening. The Tiber River glints in the distance. You don't know that empires will rise here. You don't know that millions will walk these hills. You only know that the soil is good, the water is near, and your family will eat through winter. The sun sets red over the western hills. Tomorrow, you'll plant again. The metallic tang of molten copper fills your nostrils as you crouch near the workshop fire. You're watching something your ancestors never knew. Metal that flows like water when hot, then hardens stronger than any stone. The year hovers around 3500 BCE, and the Tiber Valley is changing in ways that would have seemed like magic to the Neolithic farmers who came before. You run your fingers over a copper axe head, still warm from the mold. It's heavier than flint, and it doesn't shatter when you strike hard surfaces. The smith who made it learned the technique from traders who came up from the coast, men who'd seen it done in distant lands across the sea. They call this new age the Chalcolithic, the copperstone time, because you still use both. Your settlement sits on a low hill overlooking the river. It's bigger now than your grandparents remember. 30 roundhouses cluster together, their thatched roofs golden in the afternoon light. Wooden palisades circle the village, because copper tools aren't just for farming. They make better weapons, too. The fields stretch wider each season. You've cleared forest that stood for thousands of years, using the new axes that don't break after a dozen trees. Barley and emmer wheat grow in neat rows. Cattle graze in pens near the houses. You've even started keeping bees, their honey sweetening the flatbread your mother bakes on hot stones. But it's the bronze that changes everything. Around 200–300 BCE, smiths discover that mixing copper with tin creates something harder, sharper, more valuable. Bronze tools cost more than most families earn in a season. The man who controls the bronze workshop controls the village. Wealth isn't shared equally anymore. You notice strangers arriving more often now. Some come from the north, speaking languages you don't understand, wearing different clothes. Others sail up the Tiber from coastal settlements, their boats loaded with salt and amber and strange pottery. They want your bronze, your grain, your cattle. The dead receive different treatment now, too. Important people, those with bronze weapons and gold ornaments, get buried in stone-lined tombs with all their treasures. Common farmers go into simple graves. You can see the difference in status just by walking through the cemetery on the hillside. At night, you hear wolves howling in the remaining forest, but they sound farther away each year, pushed back by growing fields and spreading villages. The wild world is retreating, and something new is taking shape along the Tiber's muddy banks. The scent of burning oak drifts through your village as metalworkers shape bronze tools in open-air forges. You're standing in what will one day be called the Palatine Hill, but right now it's just one of several scattered settlements along the Tiber. The year is around 900 BCE, and everything's changing fast. Your neighbors are Villanovans, named after a village near modern Bologna, where archaeologists will later find their distinctive pottery. They cremate their dead, and place the ashes in biconical urns that look like little huts. You've seen these burial urns yourself, carefully placed in deep pits with bronze fibulae and simple jewelry. The huts around you are oval-shaped, made from wattle and daub, with thatched roofs. Post holes in the ground show where wooden poles support the walls. Each family lives in one of these structures, rarely bigger than 20 feet across. Smoke escapes through gaps in the roof, and the floor is just packed earth. But something new arrives from the north. Etruscan traders bring goods you've never seen before. Their pottery is finer, wheel-made, with elegant black surfaces called bucchero. They wear elaborate gold jewelry and carry iron weapons that make your bronze seem outdated. Their alphabet comes from the Greeks, and they write from right to left. The Etruscans don't conquer you outright. Instead, they settle nearby, especially on the Capitoline Hill and across the river. Their influence seeps into everything. You start copying their religious practices, reading omens from bird flights and animal livers. Their engineers teach you to drain marshy ground between the hills, creating what will become the Forum. Your settlement grows denser, more huts cluster together, and paths become recognizable streets. The Etruscans introduce you to stone foundations and tile roofs. They bring the concept of temples with columns, though yours remain modest wooden structures for now. Trade increases along the Tiber. Salt from the river mouth moves inland on a track called the Via Salaria. Goods from Greek colonies in southern Italy pass through your territory. The Latin-speaking tribes around you form loose alliances, sharing festivals and religious rites. By 700 BCE, your cluster of villages feels less isolated. Etruscan kings will soon rule here, bringing urban planning and monumental architecture. The transformation from scattered huts to something resembling a city has begun, though you don't yet call it Rome. The damp earth clings to your sandals as you climb the steep slope of the Palatine Hill. It's the 8th century before the Common Era, and you're part of a Latin tribe seeking higher ground above the marshy valley below. Your people have left the lowlands, where mosquitoes swarm and fever strikes without warning. You reach the summit and feel the breeze dry the sweat on your face. From here, you can see for miles across the Tiber River Valley. This hill rises 40 meters above the wetlands, making it perfect for defense and settlement. Your tribe isn't alone. Other Latin groups have claimed neighboring hills, the Capitoline, the Quirinal, the Esquiline. Each community builds its own cluster of oval huts with thatched roofs and wattle and daub walls. Your father shows you how to dig post holes for your family's new home. The hut will be small, maybe 4 meters across, with a central hearth for cooking and warmth. You'll sleep on straw mats along the curved walls. Outside, your mother marks out space for a vegetable garden and a pen for goats. The Palatine settlement grows quickly. Families build their huts close together for protection. You help dig a defensive ditch around the hilltop perimeter. Inside this boundary, the community feels safe from raids by rival tribes or bandits from the hills. At night, you gather around communal fires and listen to elders tell stories of your ancestors who migrated here from the Alban Hills to the southeast. Your people speak Latin, a language distinct from the Etruscan tongues spoken north of the Tiber. You worship Jupiter, Mars, and Quirinus, gods of sky, war, and community. Simple shrines dot the hilltop, where families leave offerings of grain and milk. The dead are buried in clay urns outside the settlement boundaries. their ashes mixed with personal belongings for the afterlife. Down in the valley between the hills, water still pools after heavy rains. Your tribe uses this marshy area as pasture during dry months, grazing sheep and cattle on the tough grasses. Someday, people will drain these wetlands and build a great forum there. But for now, it remains a swampy meeting ground between separate hilltop communities. The sun sets behind the Janiculum hill across the river, painting the sky orange and purple. You stand at the edge of your new home, wondering what will become of this place. The cold bronze of the crown presses against your forehead as you stand among the crowd, watching Rome's first king. Romulus raises his hand, and the assembled people fall silent. You've heard the stories whispered in the marketplace, how he killed his brother Remus in a rage over a wall, how he opened Rome's gates to outlaws and thieves seeking a fresh start. Now he's creating something new, something that's never existed before. You watch as Romulus divides the people into 3 tribes and 30 curiae. Each man knows his place, his voting group, his responsibilities. The king doesn't rule alone. He's created the Senate, a council of 100 elders whose white-haired wisdom guides his decisions. You see them gathered in their togas, debating matters of war and peace. The years pass and kings follow kings. Numa Pompilius brings peace and builds temples. You smell the incense burning at the shrine of Vesta, where sacred flames never die. Tullus Hostilius loves war and destroys Alba Longa, bringing its people to Rome. Ancus Marcius builds the first bridge across the Tiber, and you feel the wooden planks shift beneath your feet as carts rumble past. Then come the Etruscan kings. Tarquinius Priscus drains the swampy valley between the hills, and you watch the Forum take shape, a public space where Romans gather to argue, trade, and decide their future. Servius Tullius builds the Great Wall around all 7 hills and organizes citizens by wealth rather than birth. You're counted in the census, assigned to your century, given your place in Rome's growing army. But Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, changes everything. His arrogance burns like acid in Roman throats. You hear the story spreading through the streets. His son Sextus has attacked Lucretia, a virtuous Roman wife. She's taken her own life, rather than live with the shame. Her husband Collatinus and his friend Brutus stand in the Forum, holding her bloody dagger high. The crowd roars. You feel the anger rising like heat from sun-baked stones. Brutus's voice cuts through the noise. No more kings. The people surge forward, weapons in hand. Tarquin flees north to Etruria, and you watch him disappear down the road. Rome's last king is gone. The monarchy has fallen. Something new is about to begin, and you can taste the change in the air like metal on your tongue. The iron taste of blood still lingers in the air from last night's revolt. You stand in the Forum as dawn breaks over Rome in 509 BCE. Tarquin the Proud has fled. His son's crime against Lucretia sparked the fury that ended the monarchy forever. The kings are gone. You watch as citizens gather around Lucius Junius Brutus. He's the man who led the uprising. His voice carries across the crowd. Rome won't bow to one ruler again. Instead, 2 consuls will lead together. Each serves only 1 year. Each can veto the other. Power shared means power checked. The assembly votes. Brutus becomes Rome's first consul. Lucius Tarquinius Collatinus stands beside him as the second. You feel the ground shift beneath your feet. Everything's different now. The patricians, the The wealthy families control the Senate. They make the laws. They choose the consuls. But at least there's no king. You notice the tension in the crowd. Most Romans are plebeians, common people. You farm the land. You fight in the legions. Yet you can't hold office. You can't even marry patricians. The consuls promise freedom from tyranny. But freedom for whom? Brutus proves his commitment fast. When his own sons plot to restore Tarquin, he doesn't hesitate. You watch as he orders their execution. The Republic matters more than blood, more than family. The message is clear and brutal. Collatinus steps down soon after. His name ties him too closely to the Tarquins. Publius Valerius Publicola takes his place. He earns his nickname, Friend of the People, by tearing down his house on the Velian Hill. It stood too high, too much like a king's palace. The new consuls create more checks on power. They appoint quaestors to handle money. They establish the right of appeal. If a consul abuses his authority, you can challenge him before the assembly. It's not perfect. The patricians still dominate. But it's a start. You walk home through streets buzzing with debate. The Republic is fragile. Tarquin gathers allies in Etruria. He wants his throne back. War is coming. You can feel it in the nervous energy of the crowd, in the way men grip their tools a little tighter. Rome has chosen a new path. Now you must defend it. The sharp crack of a wooden staff on stone echoes through the forum as a tribune raises his hand to halt a consul's decree. You're standing in a Rome transformed, watching power shift in ways your grandparents could never have imagined. The year is 494 BCE, and the plebeians, the common people, have just walked out of the city entirely. They marched to the Sacred Mount, a hill 3 miles away. They refused to fight in Rome's armies or work in its fields. The patricians, the wealthy families who've controlled everything since the kings fell, suddenly faced a city with no soldiers and no laborers. You watch as they're forced to negotiate. The plebeians return with a victory. They now have tribunes, officials elected from their own ranks. These tribunes possess something extraordinary, the power to say veto, meaning I forbid. A single tribune can stop any law, any decree, even from a consul. Their bodies are sacrosanct, protected by oath. Anyone who harms a tribune can be killed without trial. You see the first tribunes take their positions near the Senate House. They don't sit inside with the senators, but they stand at the door, listening, ready to intervene. The patricians glare at them with barely concealed fury. Over the next decades, you witness more changes. In 471 BCE, plebeians gain their own assembly, the Concilium Plebis, where they elect tribunes and pass their own resolutions. In 451 BCE, a commission writes down Rome's laws on 12 bronze tablets displayed in the Forum. Now, everyone can see what's legal and what isn't. No more secret patrician interpretations. The 12 tables cover everything. Property rights, family law, even how to treat debtors. One law shocks you. It forbids marriage between patricians and plebeians. But in 445 BCE, the tribune Canulaeus fights this law and wins. The Lex Canulea allows intermarriage. The rigid barrier between classes begins to crack. In 367 BCE, the Licinian Sextian laws arrive. One consul each year must now be a plebeian. You watch as Lucius Sextius becomes the first plebeian consul. The patricians' monopoly on supreme power is broken. The struggle isn't over, but Rome is changing. The Republic is becoming something more than a patrician club. It's becoming a state where common voices matter, where laws protect everyone, where a farmer's son might rise to command armies. You feel the tension in every debate, every vote, every compromise hammered out in the forum's dust. The metallic ring of a sword, striking a shield, echoes through the mountain pass. You stand among Roman soldiers in 343 BCE, staring at the Samnite warriors blocking your path into Campania. These hill people control the spine of Italy, and Rome wants what they have. The First Samnite War erupts over a simple dispute. Capua, a wealthy city in Campania, asks Rome for protection against Samnite raids. You march south with the legions, your sandals grinding against volcanic rock. The Samnites fight differently than you're used to. They don't line up in neat formations. They ambush from forests, strike from ridges, then vanish into the hills. Your commanders learn quickly. Roman discipline adapts to mountain warfare. After 3 years of bitter fighting, both sides agree to peace in 341 BCE. But you know it won't last. The Second Samnite War starts in 326 BCE, when Rome establishes a colony at Fregellae. Deep in territory, the Samnites consider theirs. This time, the conflict spreads across central Italy. You fight in narrow valleys where the sun barely reaches the ground. Sweat stings your eyes as you climb slopes carrying a heavy shield. In 321 BCE comes the humiliation at the Caudine Forks. An entire Roman army, including both consuls, walks into a trap. You're forced to pass under a yoke of spears, a ritual of surrender that burns shame into every soldier's heart. Rome refuses to honor the peace treaty made under duress. The war drags on for 23 years. You watch Rome build the Via Appia, a military road that lets legions move faster than ever before. Latin colonies spring up in conquered territory. Roman citizens planted like seeds in foreign soil. The Samnites fight with desperate courage, but Rome's resources run deeper. In 304 BCE, exhausted Samnites accept peace terms, but 15 years later, they try again. The Third Samnite War pulls in Rome's old enemies, Etruscans from the north, Gauls from beyond them, and Umbrians from the east all join the Samnites. You face the largest coalition ever assembled against Rome. The decisive moment comes at Sentinum in 295 BCE. Dust clouds rise from thousands of feet as armies collide. The sharp clang of iron on iron still rings in your ears as you stand among the bodies at Beneventum. It's 275 BCE, and King Pyrrhus of Epirus has finally retreated from Italy after years of costly victories. You watch his ships disappear across the Adriatic, knowing Rome has survived its greatest test yet. His elephants terrified your legions at Heraclea and Asculum, but the price he paid was too high. "Another such victory and I am lost," he told his officers. "You've learned what that means now." The Greek cities of southern Italy stand alone without their champion. Tarentum, proud and wealthy, holds out for another 4 years, but you know its fate is sealed. In 2072 BCE, Roman soldiers march through its gates. The great harbor that once sheltered Pyrrhus's fleet now belongs to Rome. You walk its docks, feeling the warm sea breeze, understanding that your city now controls the entire Italian peninsula, from the Po Valley to the Strait of Messina. The victory changes everything. You're no longer just another Italian power. Your armies have defeated the best general of the Greek world using tactics he'd never seen before. While Pyrrhus relied on his phalanx and war elephants, your legions adapted, learned, and persevered. The Manipula system proved its worth in blood and iron. Back in Rome, you helped build new roads connecting the conquered territories. The Via Appia already stretches to Capua, but now it extends further south. Latin colonies spring up in strategic locations, and your fellow citizens settle in these distant places. They carry Roman law, Roman gods, and Roman discipline with them. The locals keep their customs but accept your authority. Some become allies with their own troops, others full citizens. It's a system that works. You stand on the Capitoline Hill, looking out over the city. Temples gleam with fresh marble, and the Forum bustles with unprecedented activity. Wealth flows in from the south, bringing Greek art, philosophy, and luxury. Your people are changing, absorbing new ideas while keeping their stern traditions. The Senate debates constantly about how to manage this vast territory. But you hear troubling news from across the sea. Sicily lies just beyond the strait, divided between Greek cities and Carthaginian strongholds. Merchants speak of tensions, of appeals for help, of opportunities. The island's wealth tempts many senators. You sense your city stands at a threshold, though you don't yet know what waits beyond it. The salt spray stings your eyes as you stand on the deck of a Roman warship, watching the Carthaginian fleet approach across the waves. You've never sailed before this war. Most Romans haven't. Your people are farmers and soldiers who march on solid ground. But Carthage controls the sea, and if Rome wants Sicily, you'll have to learn to fight on water. It's 264 BCE, and everything's changing. A group of mercenaries called the Mamertines seized the city of Messana in Sicily. They're in trouble now, caught between Syracuse and Carthage. They asked Rome for help. Your Senate debated for days. Some senators worried that helping these pirates would dishonor Rome. Others saw opportunity. Sicily's rich farmland lies just across the strait. Carthage already controls most of it. Rome decided to help. You crossed to Sicily with the legions. The Carthaginians didn't expect Rome to challenge them. They've ruled the western Mediterranean for centuries. Their ships are faster, their sailors more skilled. Their empire stretches from North Africa to Spain. But you're learning, after the Carthaginians destroyed several Roman fleets, your engineers studied a captured warship. They built copies in 60 days. You heard the hammering in every Roman shipyard, smelled the fresh-cut timber and hot pitch. Rome constructed over 100 warships before most citizens had ever sailed one. Your commanders added something new. They call it the Corvus, a boarding bridge with a spike. When it drops onto an enemy deck, it locks the ships together. Suddenly, naval battles become land battles. Your legionaries can charge across and fight hand-to-hand, the way Romans know best. The victory at Mylae shocked everyone. Roman ships captured 50 Carthaginian vessels. You celebrated in the streets, hardly believing it. Rome just defeated the greatest naval power in the world. But the war grinds on. Year after year, you fight across Sicily's hills and coasts. Carthage won't surrender their island strongholds. Rome won't back down. The Senate builds new fleets when storms destroy the old ones. Thousands of Romans drown in shipwrecks. Thousands more die in sieges. You're outside Lilybaeum now, Carthage's strongest fortress in Sicily. The siege has lasted years. The sun beats down on your helmet. your throats dry with dust. Somewhere across the water, another fleet is being built. The ground trembles beneath your sandals as Hannibal's war elephants cross the Alps into Italy. You never imagined such creatures existed. Massive beasts with tusks like curved swords and trunks that trumpet death. The Carthaginian general has brought 50,000 men over mountain passes everyone said were impossible. Now he's here, and Rome faces its greatest threat since the city's founding. You stand with 80,000 other Romans at Cannae in 216 BC. Your commanders promise victory through sheer numbers. But Hannibal's smaller force moves like water around stone. His cavalry sweeps behind you. The trap closes. You're crushed between your own panicking soldiers. 70,000 Romans die that day. The dust tastes like copper and shame. For years, Hannibal marches through Italy. He wins battle after battle, yet Rome's walls never fall. Your city refuses to surrender. The Senate won't even discuss peace while enemy soldiers stand on Italian soil. You learn a new strategy from Fabius. Avoid direct battle. Shadow the enemy. Cut supply lines. Wait. Young Scipio changes everything. He studies Hannibal's tactics, then takes the war to Africa. You sail with him to Carthage's doorstep in 24 BC. Now it's their farms burning, their cities threatened. Hannibal must return home to defend what he left behind 15 years ago. The final confrontation comes at Zama in 22 BC. You're older now, scarred from years of fighting. Scipio has trained you to counter the elephants. You bang shields and blow horns until the beasts panic and stampede backward through Carthaginian lines. Hannibal's brilliant mind meets its match. His cavalry abandons him. His infantry crumbles. The peace terms are harsh. Carthage surrenders its entire navy, except 10 ships. They pay massive tribute for 50 years. They can't wage war without Rome's permission. Spain becomes yours. Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, all Roman now. You return to a city transformed. Rome controls the entire western Mediterranean. Wealth flows in, silver from Spanish mines, grain from Sicily, slaves from everywhere. But something feels different. The simple farmer soldiers who built the Republic are becoming masters of an empire. Victory's weight settles on your shoulders like a cloak you didn't ask to wear. The acrid smell of burning timber drifts across the Mediterranean as you stand on the African shore in 146 BCE. Carthage burns for 17 days straight. You watch Roman soldiers methodically destroy every building, every street, every temple. The city that challenged Rome for a century is being erased from the earth. Scipio Aemilianus orders the plow driven through Carthage's ruins. Salt spreads across the soil in ritual curse. The Third Punic War ends not with treaty, but with total annihilation. 50,000 Carthaginians are sold into slavery. Their great harbor, their libraries, their civilization, all reduced to ash and memory. Rome now controls the entire western Mediterranean. Wealth floods into the city like never before. You see marble replacing wood in the Forum. Greek statues arrive by the shipload. Sicilian grain feeds a growing population. Spanish silver fills the treasury, but something's wrong beneath the prosperity. You notice fewer small farms as you travel through the countryside. Wealthy senators have bought up land from soldiers who returned from years of war to find their fields overgrown and their families in debt. Massive estates worked by cheap slave labor now dominate the landscape. In 1303 BCE, a young tribune named Tiberius Gracchus stands before the people. You hear his voice echo across the forum. He proposes radical reform, redistribute public land to poor citizens. No family should hold more than 300 acres of state-owned territory. The Senate erupts in fury. These are the same men who've accumulated vast holdings. Tiberius appeals directly to the people, bypassing traditional senatorial authority. You watch him push his law through the tribal assembly. The crowd roars approval. But Rome's constitution isn't built for this kind of conflict. When Tiberius runs for tribune again, breaking tradition, senators and their supporters attack him during the election. You see clubs and broken furniture used as weapons. Tiberius Gracchus dies on the Capitoline Hill along with 300 of his followers. Their bodies are thrown into the Tiber without burial rites. 10 years later, his younger brother Gaius becomes tribune. He's more ambitious, more strategic. Gaius proposes grain subsidies for the urban poor. He offers citizenship to Italian allies. He challenges the Senate's grip on jury courts. For 2 years, his reforms reshape Roman politics. The Senate strikes back harder this time. In 1201 BCE, they declare a state of emergency, the first Senatus Consultum Ultimum. You hear fighting in the streets near the Aventine Hill. The metallic clang of a soldier's sword hitting stone echoes through the forum as you watch Rome tear itself apart from within. The victory over Carthage brought wealth beyond imagination, but it also brought something darker. Roman fighting Roman in the streets where triumph once paraded. You see Gaius Marius standing before his recruits, men who own no land, who bring nothing but their bodies to war. Before this moment, only property owners could serve in Rome's legions. Marius changes everything in 1007 BC. He opens the army to the poorest citizens, the capite censi, those counted only by their heads. These men have no farms to return to. They fight for pay, for land promises, for their general. Their loyalty isn't to Rome anymore. It's to the man who feeds them. The dust rises from thousands of marching feet as Marius crushes Jugurtha in Africa, then saves Italy from Germanic tribes at Aquae Sextiae and Vercellae. He's consul 6 times, something that breaks every tradition. You feel the Republic's foundations crack with each unprecedented election. Then comes the social war in 91 BC. Rome's Italian allies, denied citizenship after centuries of bleeding for Roman conquest, finally revolt. The peninsula burns. When the fighting stops 3 years later, Rome grants citizenship to all Italians south of the Po River. The Republic expands, but it's weaker now, hollowed out by internal war. Lucius Cornelius Sulla returns from the east in 88 BC, his legions loyal only to him. Marius flees. When Sulla marches on Rome itself, the first Roman general to do so, you watch senators scatter like pigeons. He leaves for war against Mithridates. Marius returns, takes the city, massacres Sulla's supporters. Blood runs in the forum where laws once mattered. Sulla comes back in 82 BC with victory and vengeance. The proscriptions begin. Death lists posted in the forum. If your name appears, you're dead. Your property goes to Sulla's veterans. Thousands die. The Senate House fills with terrified men who vote for whatever Sulla demands. He declares himself dictator, not for 6 months as tradition allows, but without limit. You watch him reshape Rome's constitution. stripped the tribunes of power, packed the Senate with his supporters. For 2 years, one man's will becomes law. Then, impossibly, Sulla retires in 79 BC. He walks away from absolute power, returns to his villa, dies a year later. But the damage is done. Every ambitious general now knows the path to power runs through loyal legions, not the Senate House. The Republic still stands, but its heart beats irregularly now, waiting for the next man who dares to march on Rome. The salt spray stings your face as you watch Pompey's fleet return to Ostia, their hulls riding low with eastern treasure. The year is 62 BCE, and Rome has never seen such wealth. Gold from Pontus, silks from Syria, spices from distant lands you can't even pronounce. Pompey has conquered the East, destroyed pirates who terrorized the Mediterranean for decades, and brought more territory under Roman control than any general before him. You push through the crowds lining the Via Sacra for his triumph. It lasts 2 full days. Prisoners shuffle past in chains, exotic animals you've never seen roar from cages, and wagons groan under mountains of plunder. Pompey himself rides in a chariot, wearing a cloak that once belonged to Alexander the Great. The Senate granted him the name Magnus the Great, but now they fear him. In the Forum, you hear whispers about 3 men meeting in secret. Pompey needs land for his veterans and wants the Senate to ratify his eastern settlements. They refuse him, suspicious of his power. Julius Caesar returns from Spain with debts so massive they could buy a province. Marcus Crassus, Rome's richest man, wants political influence his money alone can't purchase. In 60 BCE, they form an alliance. No official title, no public ceremony. Just 3 ambitious men agreeing to help each other. You hear it called the First Triumvirate years later, but right now it's simply a deal. Caesar becomes consul with their support. He passes laws giving Pompey's veterans their land. He secures tax contracts for Crassus's business associates. Caesar marries his daughter Julia to Pompey, sealing their bond with family ties. You see her sometimes in the markets, young and beautiful, genuinely devoted to her much older husband. The marriage works. Pompey softens, becomes almost domestic. Then Caesar leaves for Gaul as governor. You watch his legions march north through the city gates. He promises to be gone only 5 years. But everyone knows he's hunting glory to match Pompey's. The Senate thinks they've exiled him to the frontier. They're wrong. Letters arrive describing victories against fierce tribes. Caesar crosses the Rhine, invades Britain, places Romans thought were myths. His wealth grows. His legions become legendary, and in Rome, the triumvirate begins to crack under the weight of jealousy and ambition. The cold river water splashes against your boots as you stand on the bank of the Rubicon. In January 49 BC, you watch Caesar pace along the shore with his single legion. He's silent for a long moment. Everyone knows crossing this river with an army means civil war. It breaks Roman law. There's no going back. "The die is cast," he says quietly in Greek. Then he walks into the water. You follow him south toward Rome. Pompey and the Senate flee to Greece. They don't expect Caesar to move this fast. City after city opens its gates without a fight. Within 60 days, you're standing in an empty forum. The Republic's leaders have abandoned their own capital. The civil war spreads across the Mediterranean. You sail to Spain, where you defeat Pompey's legions. Then you cross to Greece. At Pharsalus in 48 BC, you watch Caesar's smaller army destroy Pompey's forces. Pompey escapes to Egypt, but the Egyptians kill him before Caesar arrives. They think it'll please Rome's new master. In Alexandria, Caesar meets Cleopatra. She's 21, brilliant, and fighting her brother for Egypt's throne. Caesar helps her win. He stays 9 months. You can feel Rome growing restless without him. Back in Rome, Caesar becomes dictator, not the temporary kind from the old days. He keeps the title year after year. He reforms the calendar, giving you the one you still use today. He settles veterans in colonies. He plans libraries, new buildings, a canal through Greece. His energy seems endless, but you notice the whispers. Senators resent bowing to one man. Caesar refuses a bodyguard. He pardons his enemies and gives them positions of power. Some call it mercy. Others call it arrogance. You're not in the Senate chamber on March 15, 44 BC. You hear about it in the forum afterward. 23 stab wounds. Brutus and Cassius led the conspiracy. Men Caesar forgave, men he trusted. He fell at the base of Pompey's statue. The assassins expect celebration. Instead, you watch Rome freeze in confusion. Mark Antony reads Caesar's will to the crowd. Caesar left gardens to the public and money to every citizen. The mob explodes in rage. You smell smoke as they burn the Senate house. The liberators flee the city. Caesar's body lies in the forum, while Rome tears itself apart. The salt spray stings your eyes as the deck tilts beneath your feet. You're watching from a distant galley as 2 massive fleets collide near Actium's promontory. It's September 31 BCE, and the Mediterranean world's future hangs on this single battle. Antony and Cleopatra command nearly 500 ships on one side. Octavian and his admiral Agrippa face them with lighter, faster vessels. The water churns white with broken oars. You hear the crack of timber as bronze rams punch through hulls. Fire arrows arc across the gap between fleets. Smoke drifts thick and acrid over the waves. Antony's heavy quinqueremes can't maneuver quickly enough. Agrippa's ships dart in and out like wolves hunting buffalo. Then something unexpected happens. Cleopatra's Egyptian squadron suddenly raises purple sails and breaks away. She's fleeing south toward open sea. Antony abandons his flagship and follows her. His remaining fleet fights on for hours before surrendering. You've just witnessed the end of Rome's civil wars. Octavian returns to Rome in 29 BCE as the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. But he's learned from Caesar's mistakes. He doesn't call himself king or dictator. Instead, he takes the modest title princeps, meaning first citizen. In 27 BCE, the Senate grants him a new name, Augustus, meaning the revered one. You watch Augustus carefully reshape Roman government. He keeps the Senate and consuls and tribunes. Everything looks like the old republic still functions. But real power flows through him. He controls the armies. He appoints provincial governors. He manages Rome's grain supply and building projects. The transformation feels subtle but complete. Augustus stations permanent legions on distant frontiers instead of disbanding them after campaigns. He creates the Praetorian Guard to protect the emperor. He reforms taxation and establishes a professional civil service. Rome's expanding into an empire with a permanent administrative structure. The Pax Romana begins under his rule. For the first time in a century, you can travel from Spain to Syria without fear of civil war. Trade flourishes, cities grow. Augustus boasts he found Rome brick and left it marble. New temples, forums, and aqueducts rise across the city. The Arapacis celebrates peace itself as a divine gift. But succession remains uncertain. Augustus has no sons, only his daughter Julia and various adopted heirs who keep dying young. The marble feels cool beneath your sandals as you walk through the forum under Augustus's new order. Rome doesn't call him emperor. That word tastes too much like king. Instead, he's princeps, first citizen, and the Republic's old forms still stand like theater masks over a changed face. You watch senators debate in the Curia, but everyone knows real power rests with one man. Augustus holds tribunician authority for life, commands all armies, controls Egypt's grain, and appoints governors. He's restored the Republic, he says, yet his word shapes every decision. It's a clever dance between old traditions and new reality. Peace settles across the Mediterranean for the first time in generations. The civil wars that tore your parents' world apart have ended. Legions guard distant frontiers, while merchants travel safely from Hispania to Syria. You hear people calling it Pax Romana, Roman peace. And it's not just propaganda. Roads stay clear of bandits. Ships cross seas without pirate attacks. Cities grow without fear of sudden war. Augustus reshapes Rome itself in marble and stone. The old brick city transforms before your eyes. New temples rise on the Palatine. The Forum gets a fresh basilica. Aqueducts bring more water than ever before. He boasts he found Rome in brick and leaves it in marble, and you can't argue with what you see. He revives old religious festivals your grandparents barely remembered. Priests perform ancient rites with renewed ceremony. He passes laws encouraging marriage and childbirth, trying to restore what he calls traditional Roman values. Not everyone appreciates his moral legislation, but few dare oppose him openly. The Praetorian Guard camps near the city now. 9 cohorts of elite soldiers, loyal to Augustus personally. They're his insurance policy, though he'd never phrase it that way. You notice how their presence changes conversations, adds weight to his suggestions. Poetry flourishes under his patronage. Virgil writes of Rome's divine destiny in the Aeneid. Horace composes odes praising the new age. Livy chronicles Rome's history from its legendary founding. Art and literature serve the Principate's message. Rome has achieved its destined greatness under Augustus's guidance. His family becomes Rome's unofficial royal house. His stepson Tiberius and nephew Marcellus hold important commands. When Marcellus dies young, Augustus adjusts his succession plans. Everything revolves around maintaining stability, ensuring smooth transition, preventing another civil war. You sense this peace has a price. Liberty traded for security. Debate replaced by consensus. But after decades of bloodshed, most Romans accept the bargain gladly. The Principate settles into permanence while pretending to be temporary. The marble floor feels cold beneath your feet as you walk through the palace corridors in the year 14 CE. Augustus is dead. The man who ruled for 41 years, who brought peace after decades of civil war, is gone. Now his stepson Tiberius sits on the throne, a man who never wanted this power. You watch Tiberius in the Senate. He's 55 years old, experienced, capable. But he doesn't hide his resentment. He tells senators to make their own decisions, yet punishes them when they do. You sense the confusion spreading through Rome's government. By 26 CE, something changes. Tiberius leaves Rome entirely. He moves to the island of Capri and never returns to the city. From across the bay, he rules through letters and messengers. You hear whispers about what happens on that island, stories too dark to repeat in public. In Rome, a man named Sejanus controls everything. He commands the Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal soldiers. He accuses senators of treason. Families disappear in the night. You learn to watch your words carefully. Anyone might be an informer. Then, in 31 CE, Tiberius suddenly turns on Sejanus. The prefect is executed. But the treason trials don't stop. They grow worse. You see the fear in people's eyes when they talk about the emperor on his island. When Tiberius dies in 37 CE, Rome celebrates. His great-nephew Gaius takes power. You know him by his nickname, Caligula, Little Boots, from his childhood in military camps. At first, Caligula seems perfect. He's young, generous, loved by the people. He gives games, grants amnesty, respects the Senate. For 6 months, Rome feels renewed. Then Caligula falls seriously ill. When he recovers, he's different. You notice it immediately. He declares himself a living god. He builds a temple to himself. He makes his horse a consul. You watch senators forced to worship him, kissing his feet like he's Jupiter himself. The executions begin. Rich senators are killed so Caligula can take their wealth. He needs money for his wild projects. You see him building a floating bridge across the Bay of Naples, just to ride his horse across it. Millions of sesterces wasted on madness. In 41 CE, the Praetorian Guard has enough. They corner Caligula in a palace tunnel. You hear the news within hours. The mad emperor is dead, stabbed dozens of times. The soldiers find his uncle Claudius hiding behind a curtain, terrified. They drag him out and declare him emperor. The acrid smell of smoke still clings to your hair 3 days after the flames died. You stand in what used to be a crowded neighborhood near the Circus Maximus, but now you see only blackened timber and melted bronze. The fire started on a summer night in 64 CE, and for 6 days it devoured Rome. 10 of the city's 14 regions burned. You hear people whispering that Nero himself started the blaze. Some say they saw imperial guards preventing citizens from fighting the flames. Others claim the emperor sang about Troy's destruction while Rome burned, though you know he was actually at Antium when it started. The truth doesn't matter now. What matters is that 2/3 of the city is ash. Nero opens his palace gardens to the homeless. He brings in grain at his own expense and lowers its price. You watch construction crews clearing rubble under new building codes that mandate wider streets and stone facades. The emperor plans a magnificent golden house where the fire cleared the most land. You can't shake the feeling that he's building his dream on your nightmare. Then the arrests begin. You notice soldiers dragging away people you've seen gathering in secret, people who worship a crucified Jewish teacher named Christus. Nero needs someone to blame, and he's chosen them. The emperor calls them enemies of humanity, haters of mankind. You hear they practice cannibalism and incest. Though you suspect these are lies, the punishments turn your stomach. In Nero's gardens, you see Christians sewn into animal skins and torn apart by dogs. At night, the emperor lights his pathways with human torches, believers covered in pitch and set aflame. Some are crucified in mockery of their god. Even Romans who despise Christians start to feel pity. The cruelty seems excessive, the spectacle too theatrical. You watch Peter, one of their leaders, led to execution. They crucify him upside down at his own request. Another leader named Paul, a Roman citizen, receives a quicker death by beheading. Their followers go underground, marking tombs and meeting places with a simple fish symbol. The persecution doesn't stop the faith from spreading. If anything, the blood of martyrs seems to water it like seed. You notice more fish symbols appearing in unexpected places, scratched into walls where soldiers don't look. Nero's popularity crumbles despite his rebuilding efforts. The Golden House rises, but so does resentment. The smell of smoke drifts through Rome's streets as news arrives that Nero is dead. You stand in the Forum as citizens whisper nervously. It's June 68 CE, and nobody knows what comes next. For the first time in nearly a century, the Julio-Claudian dynasty has ended. The empire suddenly feels unstable beneath your feet. Galba marches into Rome from Spain. He's 73 years old, stern and rigid. The Praetorian Guard expects a generous donative for their support, but Galba refuses to pay. You watch soldiers grumble in their barracks. They feel cheated and angry. Within months, whispers of rebellion spread through military camps. By January 69, the Rhine legions proclaim Vitellius emperor. The Praetorians murder Galba in the Forum itself. You see his body left in the street like common refuse. Otho, who helped orchestrate the coup, seizes power. He promises stability, but the legions don't care about promises anymore. They've learned emperors can be made and unmade by swords. Otho rules for just 3 months. Vitellius's German legions march south into Italy. You hear reports of the Battle of Bedriacum in April. Otho's forces lose badly. Rather than prolong civil war, Otho takes his own life. Some call it honorable. Others call it weak. Either way, Rome has its third emperor in 6 months. Vitellius enters the city in July. He's a glutton who loves feasts and spectacles. You watch him parade through streets still scarred by recent violence. The treasury is nearly empty from constant donatives to troops. Soldiers roam freely, taking what they want. The city feels lawless and afraid, but in the east, legions proclaim yet another emperor. Vespasian, a tough general from a middle-class family, commands respect in Judea. His forces march west while Rome holds its breath. By autumn, Vespasian's supporters reach Italy. Fighting erupts again near Bedriacum. This time, Vitellius's troops break and flee. December brings horror to Rome itself. Vespasian's forces storm the city. You hear fighting near the capital. The great temple of Jupiter catches fire during the battle. Flames consume Rome's most sacred shrine. Vitellius hides in the palace, terrified. Soldiers drag him out, torture him through the streets, and kill him at the Gemonian stairs. 4 emperors in 1 year. The streets run with blood. The lesson is clear now. Armies make emperors, not senates or birthright. The rumble of construction fills the air as you stand in the valley between Rome's hills. Dust rises in thick clouds from thousands of workers hauling stone blocks across wooden scaffolding. It's been a year since Vespasian took power, And he's transforming Nero's private paradise into something for all Romans. Where that hated emperor built his golden palace, you now see the foundations of the largest amphitheater the world has ever known. You watch slaves and craftsmen work side by side, their sweat mixing with mortar. The structure rises from the drained lake that once reflected Nero's colossal statue. Vespasian's message is clear. He's giving back to the people what Nero stole. The new Flavian amphitheater will hold 50,000 spectators, more than any building before it. The emperor himself sometimes visits the site, checking progress with his engineers. He's not like the mad rulers before him. Vespasian came from a middle-class family, served as a general, and understands practical matters. He jokes with common soldiers and doesn't pretend to be a god. After the chaos of civil war, Romans appreciate his steady hand. His son Titus stands beside him during inspections, learning how to rule. The young man already proved himself commanding legions in Judea. In the year 70, he captured Jerusalem after a brutal siege, destroying the Second Temple and bringing its treasures back to Rome. You've seen the golden menorah paraded through the streets. That wealth now funds the amphitheater's construction. Vespasian doesn't just build monuments. He restores temples burned during the Civil War, repairs aqueducts, and stabilizes the treasury. He even taxes public toilets, laughing when critics complain. Money doesn't smell, he says, holding up a coin. The practicality works. Rome's finances recover. The construction noise never stops. Day after day, you hear hammers striking stone, wooden cranes creaking under massive weights, foremen shouting orders in Latin and Greek. The outer wall reaches higher each month, its arches forming perfect curves. Inside, workers dig corridors and chambers beneath the arena floor. These underground passages will hide gladiators, animals, and stage machinery. Vespasian won't live to see it finished. In the year 79, he dies from fever, joking even on his deathbed that he's becoming a god. Titus becomes emperor and pushes the construction forward. The amphitheater opens in the year 80 with 100 days of games. You stand among the crowds as gladiators fight, exotic animals die, and mock naval battles flood the arena. But something terrible waits beyond Rome's celebrations. The rhythmic thud of hobnailed boots on stone echoes through the forum as you watch Trajan's legions march past. It's 98 CE, and Rome has a new emperor. You can feel the shift in the air. After Nerva's brief reign, this Spanish-born general brings something different. Energy, ambition, a hunger for glory that reminds you of Augustus himself. You press through the crowd as Trajan addresses the Senate. His voice carries confidence without arrogance. He promises to consult them on major decisions. He won't rule like Domitian did, with fear and suspicion. The senators lean forward, wanting to believe, and surprisingly, Trajan keeps his word. The city transforms under his rule. New aqueducts bring fresh water. Public baths rise in neighborhoods that never had them before. You watch workers lay the foundation for a massive forum that'll dwarf all the others. Trajan's architect, Apollodorus of Damascus, designs buildings that seem impossible. The emperor doesn't just talk about serving Rome, he builds for it. But Trajan isn't content with peace. His eyes turn northeast, toward Dacia. King Decebalus rules there, a warrior who defeated Roman armies before. The Dacian gold mines gleam in Trajan's plans. That wealth could fund everything Rome needs. In 1-1, the legions march. You hear stories from soldiers returning on leave. The Dacians fight fiercely in their mountain fortresses. They use curved swords called foxes that can slice through Roman shields. The first campaign ends with Decebalus agreeing to terms, but it's an uneasy truce. By 105, war erupts again. This time, Trajan builds something extraordinary. Engineers construct a massive stone bridge across the Danube River. You see the sketches brought back to Rome. It's the longest bridge anyone's ever built, resting on 20 stone piers. Apollodorus designed it, and it lets the legions cross with supplies and siege equipment. The Second Dacian War is brutal. Decebalus knows he's fighting for survival. But Roman discipline and engineering prove too much. In 106, the Dacian capital falls. Decebalus takes his own life rather than march in Trajan's triumph. Dacia becomes a province. Ships arrive in Ostia, carrying Dacian gold. So much gold that Trajan can fund his building projects for years. The emperor orders a column built in his new forum, carved with scenes from the wars. You watch sculptors work on the spiraling reliefs. The marble feels cool beneath your fingertips as you trace the carved letters of Hadrian's name. The new emperor doesn't rush into wars like Trajan did. He travels instead, walking the empire's edges himself, watching, listening, measuring what Rome truly needs. You stand at the construction site, where workers raise an enormous wall across northern Britannia. Hadrian ordered this barrier built from coast to coast, 73 miles of stone and turf. It's not just defense, it's a statement. Rome stops here. Beyond lies wilderness the empire doesn't need. Back in the capital, Hadrian rebuilds the Pantheon with a dome so vast it seems impossible. The oculus at its center lets rain fall straight onto the marble floor. You watch water pool and drain away, sunlight moving across the walls like a sundial. Engineers whisper about the concrete recipe, how it gets lighter toward the top, how the weight distributes perfectly. The emperor loves Greek culture more than Roman tradition. He grows a beard like a philosopher. He builds a massive villa at Tiber, where he recreates places he's seen, miniature versions of Athens and Alexandria. When his young companion, Antinous, drowns in the Nile, Hadrian's grief shakes the court. He founds a city named for the boy and declares him a god. After Hadrian comes Antoninus Pius, who barely leaves Italy during 23 peaceful years. You notice how quiet everything becomes. No major wars, no dramatic building projects. Just steady administration, fair courts, roads maintained, borders watched. People call it boring. They don't realize boring means safe. Then, Marcus Aurelius takes power, and you see something rare. A philosopher forced to be a soldier. He'd rather read Stoic texts than plan campaigns. But Germanic tribes push hard against the Danube frontier. You march with legions into cold forests where Romans haven't fought in generations. At night in the military camp, the emperor writes by lamplight. His private notebooks fill with thoughts about duty, mortality, accepting what you cannot change. You catch glimpses of the pages. He reminds himself that fame means nothing, that even emperors become dust. Plague sweeps through the army, and then the empire. Bodies pile in Rome's streets. The population drops by millions. Marcus Aurelius sells imperial treasures to fund the war effort and relief for the sick. He stations legions permanently along the Danube, turning temporary camps into stone fortresses. His son Commodus waits in Rome, growing restless, nothing like his father. The marble floor feels cold beneath your feet as you stand in the palace corridor, listening to the roar of the crowd beyond the walls. It's 180 AD, and everything Marcus Aurelius built is crumbling under his son's rule. Commodus doesn't want to be emperor. He wants to be a gladiator. You watch him stride through Rome dressed in lion skins, calling himself Hercules. He fights in the arena while the empire needs leadership. Senators whisper in dark corners. They remember the 5 good emperors, the years of wisdom and strength. Now they've got a ruler who renames Rome after himself and slaughters ostriches for entertainment. The conspiracy forms quickly. On the last day of 1902, Commodus dies in his bath, strangled by a wrestler. You feel relief, then dread. 5 emperors fight for power in a single year. Pertinax lasts 3 months before the Praetorian Guard kills him. Then something unthinkable happens. The Guard auctions the empire to the highest bidder. Didius Julianus buys the throne with promises of gold. He survives 9 weeks. Septimius Severus marches his legions into Rome. He's from Africa. A military man who understands power comes from soldiers, not senators. You watch him disband the old Praetorian Guard and fill it with his own troops. The message is clear. The army chooses emperors now. His son Caracalla takes over in 211. And you see the brutality escalate. He murders his own brother Geta in their mother's arms, then kills 20,000 of Geta's supporters. In 212, he grants citizenship to nearly everyone in the empire. It sounds generous until you realize why. Citizens pay more taxes. Caracalla dies in 217, stabbed while urinating on a roadside. Macrinus rules briefly. Then Elagabalus, a teenage priest from Syria, becomes emperor. You watch him bring his sun god to Rome, marry a Vestal virgin, and scandalize everyone with his behavior. 4 years later, the god drowns him in the Tiber. The Severan dynasty staggers on, but you feel the foundation cracking. Armies make emperors now. Provinces grow restless. The treasury empties while military pay rises. When young Severus Alexander falls in 235, murdered by his own troops, you sense something worse approaching. The age of soldier emperors is beginning, and Rome's long crisis waits just ahead. The emperor's blood is still warm on the marble floor when the legions outside proclaim their own commander as the new Augustus. You watch from the Senate steps as soldiers drag away the body. He ruled for 18 months. The one before him lasted 11. You've stopped learning their names. The silver in your purse buys less bread each week. Merchants weigh coins now, instead of counting them. The metal feels lighter, looks duller. The mint workers mix more copper into each denarius. Everyone knows. Everyone knows. Everyone pretends not to notice. A loaf that cost 2 coins last year needs 8 today. Germanic tribes cross the Rhine in waves. Goths pour over the Danube. Persian armies take Syria and Mesopotamia. The frontiers you once thought eternal crumble like sun-dried clay. Emperors rush from crisis to crisis. They never stay in Rome anymore. You hear they rule from military camps near the borders. Valerian marches east to fight the Persians. News arrives 2 years later that makes you grip the table. The Emperor of Rome is captured. Shapur forces him to kneel as a footstool when mounting his horse. You thought such humiliation impossible. The world feels upside down. Gallienus holds what remains. Gaul breaks away under its own emperors. Palmyra in the east declares independence. Queen Zenobia's armies take Egypt and Asia Minor. The empire splits into 3 pieces. Tax collectors still come to your door, but you wonder where the money goes. The aqueducts need repair. Bandits control roads 20 miles from the city. Claudius Gothicus defeats a massive Gothic invasion. You feel hope for the first time in years. Then plague sweeps through his army, another emperor dead. Aurelian takes power, and you brace for another short reign. But this one fights differently. He marches west and crushes the Gallic Empire, turns east and defeats Zenobia, brings her to Rome in golden chains for his triumph. You watch her walk through the streets, this queen who nearly carved away half the world. Aurelian builds new walls around Rome, massive brick barriers that dwarf the old Servian defenses. You help carry stones. The walls say what no one speaks aloud. The city itself needs protection now. Aurelian dies on campaign, murdered by officers who misread a forged letter. The cycle continues. Emperors rise from army camps and fall to assassins' blades. 50 years of chaos. You're older now. You've seen 20 emperors. The purple means nothing except a target on your back. The scent of incense drifts through the palace halls while you watch the old emperor struggle to stand. It's the year 284, and Rome teeters on the edge of collapse. 50 years of chaos have nearly destroyed everything. Emperors rise and fall like leaves in autumn wind. Armies fight each other while barbarians cross the borders. The currency means nothing anymore. Diocletian doesn't look like a savior when he takes power. He's a soldier from Dalmatia, born to freed slaves. But you notice something different in his eyes. He doesn't want glory or conquest. He wants order. You watch him work through the winter months. He splits the empire in half first. Too big for one man to rule, he says. He takes the eastern provinces. He names Maximian his co-emperor for the west. 2 Augusti, they're called. Equal in power. But it's not enough. The borders still bleed. Rebellions flare up faster than anyone can reach them. So in 293, Diocletian creates something new. The Tetrarchy. 4 rulers instead of 2. Each Augustus names a Caesar as his junior partner. Diocletian chooses Galerius. Maximian picks Constantius. The empire divides into 4 zones. You travel the new administrative districts. Everything changes. Provinces split into smaller units. Tax collectors appear everywhere. The army doubles in size. Prices get fixed by imperial decree. You need permission to change jobs now. Farmers can't leave their land. Sons must follow their father's trades. The system works, though. Borders stabilize. Rebellions get crushed quickly. Trade routes open again. You feel order returning like blood flowing back into cold limbs. But then the persecution begins. It starts slowly in 299. Christian soldiers must sacrifice to the old gods or leave the army. You watch friends choose exile over incense burning. Diocletian tolerates it at first. He married a Christian woman. His daughter Valeria follows Christ too. Galerius pushes harder. He whispers in the emperor's ear during Eastern campaigns. Christians weaken the army, he says. They refuse to honor the emperor properly. They're traitors hiding in plain sight. February 303 brings the breaking point. Imperial guards storm the great church in Nicomedia. They burn the scriptures. They tear down the walls. The next day, Diocletian's edict arrives in every city. Churches must be destroyed. Sacred texts surrendered. Christian officials lose their ranks. Anyone who refuses faces torture. The smell of burning books fills the streets while you watch the systematic destruction begin. The chill of dawn cuts through your tunic as you stand in the streets of Rome. Word has just arrived from Milan. Constantine, the emperor who defeated Maxentius at the Milvian Bridge, has issued an edict. You can hardly believe what you're hearing. Christians can now worship openly. For 3 centuries, your faith meant danger. You remember the stories your grandmother told. Her father hid in the catacombs during Diocletian's persecution. Neighbors disappeared in the night. Scriptures burned in public squares. Now everything's changed. Constantine doesn't just tolerate Christians, he favors them. You watch as workers begin constructing a massive basilica over Peter's tomb on Vatican Hill. The emperor's mother, Helena, travels to Jerusalem and returns with relics she claims are from the true cross. Churches rise across the city where temples once stood alone. The emperor moves the capital east to Byzantium. He renames it Constantinople. Rome feels the shift immediately. The Senate still meets, but real power flows toward the new city. You notice fewer imperial visits, fewer grand celebrations. The old families grumble, but they're careful. Constantine controls the legions. In 325, you hear about a great council at Nicaea. Bishops from across the empire gather to define Christian doctrine. They debate the nature of Christ, the date of Easter, the structure of church hierarchy. Constantine himself presides. The faith that once hid in shadows now shapes imperial policy. Not everyone converts. Your neighbor still sacrifices to Jupiter in private. The Vestal virgins tend their sacred flame. Pagan senators argue in the forum. But the momentum's unmistakable. When Constantine dies in 337, he's baptized on his deathbed. His sons continue his policies. You watch the transformation daily. Pagan temples receive no new funding. Their priesthoods dwindle. Christian bishops gain influence in courts and councils. The city's spiritual center shifts from the Capitoline Hill to the Vatican. Rome's becoming a Christian capital, even as political power moves east. The old gods aren't gone yet. They'll linger for decades, but you sense the future taking shape. The empire that persecuted your faith now promotes it. The religion born in a distant province now commands imperial favor. The sun sets over the Tiber. You wonder what your grandchildren will see. Will temples become churches? Will the old rituals fade completely? The city's changing faster than you ever imagined possible. The marble floor feels cold beneath your feet as you walk through the Imperial Palace in Milan. The year is 364, and you sense something fundamental is about to change. Emperor Valentinian I stands before a map of the empire, his finger tracing the long frontier from Britain to Mesopotamia. One man can't hold all of this anymore, he tells his advisors. The barbarian pressure is too great on every border. You watch as Valentinian makes his choice. He'll rule the west from Milan, commanding the armies along the Rhine and Danube. His brother Valens will take the east, governing from Constantinople. It's not the first time Rome's been divided, but this split feels different, more permanent. The two halves are drifting apart, like continents slowly separating. In Rome itself, you notice the city isn't the center anymore. The emperors rarely visit. They're always near the frontiers, moving armies, fighting wars. The Senate still meets, but its power is mostly ceremonial now. The real decisions happen wherever the emperor camps with his legions. The crisis comes in 378. You hear the news from the east with disbelief. Emperor Valens and 2/3 of his army have been destroyed at Adrianople by Gothic warriors. The Goths aren't just raiding anymore. They're living inside the empire's borders, and they've just proven they can defeat Rome's legions in open battle. Theodosius I becomes the new Eastern Emperor in 379. You watch as he tries something different. Instead of fighting the Goths endlessly, he settles them as federates within the empire. They'll keep their own leaders, their own laws, but fight for Rome. It's a dangerous gamble. You're letting armed barbarian nations live inside your borders. In 380, Theodosius makes another momentous choice. Christianity becomes the empire's official religion, not just legal, but mandatory. The old temples must close. The ancient sacrifices must stop. You see the Temple of Vesta in Rome's Forum finally go dark after burning for over 1,000 years. When Theodosius dies in 395, the empire splits again between his two young sons. Honorius gets the west, ruling from Ravenna now, not Rome. Arcadius takes the east. This time, the division never heals. You're watching the Roman Empire become two separate worlds, speaking different languages, facing different enemies, following different paths into an uncertain future. The bronze gates of the city groan open under pressure you never thought possible. August heat shimmers off stone walls as Gothic warriors pour through the Salarian gate. It's 410 CE, and Rome, eternal Rome, falls for the first time in 8 centuries. You watch from a rooftop as Alaric's Visigoths flood the streets. The king didn't want this. He tried negotiating, tried diplomacy, tried everything except violence. But Emperor Honorius, safe in Ravenna's marshes, refused every offer. Now hunger and frustration drive the Goths forward. The sack lasts 3 days. You hide in cellars while soldiers take gold, silver, and treasures. But something's different from other conquests. Alaric's Christian faith restrains the worst violence. Churches become sanctuaries. People who reach St. Peter's survive untouched. The Goths take wealth but spare most lives. Still, the shock ripples across the world. In Bethlehem, St. Jerome weeps. In North Africa, Augustine begins writing The City of God to explain how Rome could fall. The unthinkable happened. Alaric dies months later in southern Italy. His people bury him in a riverbed, then redirect the water back. No one finds his grave. The Western Empire stumbles on, weaker each year. Vandals cross from Spain into North Africa in 429, taking Rome's grain supply. You watch food shipments stop. The city that once fed 1 million now struggles to feed 50,000. In 455, Vandal ships appear at Ostia. King Genseric's forces enter Rome for 14 days. This sack's more thorough, more brutal. They strip copper from roofs, statues from forums, even tiles from the Palatine. The word vandalism will carry their name forever. Emperors become puppets. Germanic generals hold real power. You see Ricimer making and unmaking emperors like chess pieces. The Senate still meets, still pretends authority matters. But everyone knows the truth. In 4766, a Germanic commander named Odoacer removes the last Western emperor, a boy named Romulus Augustulus. The irony cuts deep. Rome's first king and first emperor were both named Romulus. Now the last emperor shares that name. Odoacer doesn't claim the imperial title. He sends the crown and purple robes to Constantinople, declaring the East's emperor rules all. But really, he rules Italy as an independent king. The Western Roman Empire ends not with thunder, but with a whisper. The eastern half continues in Constantinople for another 1,000 years. But here in Rome, you witness the ancient world closing. The Forum falls silent. Aqueducts crack and leak. Marble buildings become quarries for new construction. The marble floor feels cold beneath your feet as you stand in the palace of Ravenna. The year is 493, and the Gothic king, Theodoric, has just ended his siege. You watch as he meets Odoacer, the man who deposed the last Western emperor. They share a banquet together, but within 10 days, Odoacer lies dead. Theodoric's sword has ended the negotiation. Italy now belongs to the Ostrogoths. You walk through Rome's streets and notice something unexpected. The aqueducts still flow with water. The Senate still meets in its ancient hall. Theodoric doesn't destroy what Rome built. He preserves it. He calls himself King of the Goths and Romans, and he means both titles equally. In his court at Ravenna, Roman senators work alongside Gothic warriors. The old administration continues under new management. Theodoric writes letters to his officials through his secretary Cassiodorus. You hear these instructions read aloud in the Forum. Repair the walls, maintain the grain supply, restore the theaters, keep the baths running. The Gothic king respects Roman civilization even as he rules it. He follows Arian Christianity while allowing Catholic Romans to worship freely. Jews receive protection under his laws. You see building projects throughout the city. The Pons Aemilius gets repairs. The Theater of Pompey receives restoration funds. Theodoric even begins draining the Pontine marshes to create farmland. He strikes coins showing himself in Roman dress, wearing the imperial diadema. Yet he never claims the title of emperor. That would anger Constantinople, and Theodoric walks a careful line between East and West. The Senate honors him with a statue in the Forum. You stand before it and read the inscription praising his justice and wisdom. For 33 years, Italy knows relative peace. Trade flows along the roads. Farmers plant their fields without fear of invasion. The Gothic soldiers keep order, and Roman law governs daily life. But tensions simmer beneath this calm surface. In 503, Theodoric grows suspicious of his Roman advisors. He believes they plot with Constantinople against him. You hear whispers that the philosopher Boethius faces arrest. The king who once balanced two worlds now sees conspiracy everywhere. His final years turn darker as paranoia replaces tolerance. When Theodoric dies in 526, the careful balance he maintained begins to crack. The distant clang of iron echoes through Rome's empty forums as you watch Byzantine soldiers march past crumbling monuments. It's 535, and Emperor Justinian in Constantinople dreams of restoring the old Roman Empire. He sent his brilliant general, Belisarius, to reconquer Italy from the Ostrogoths. You've lived through decades of Theodoric's stable rule, but now everything's changing. The Gothic king Witiges doesn't have Theodoric's wisdom or strength. When Belisarius arrives with his army, many Romans welcome him at first. You remember the excitement. Real Roman soldiers returning after 60 years of Gothic control. But this war doesn't end quickly. The Goths fight back hard. You watch as armies clash outside your city walls again and again. Fields burn. Aqueducts break. People starve during long sieges. The city that knew peace under Theodoric now suffers terribly. In 506, the Gothic king Totila captures Rome. You flee with thousands of others. When you return weeks later, you find a ghost city. Grass grows in the forum. Wild animals roam the streets. Only 500 people remain in a city that once held 1 million. Belisarius retakes Rome, then loses it again. The war drags on for nearly 20 years. Buildings collapse. Population drops to maybe 30,000. The Senate, that ancient institution, finally disappears. No one even records when it meets for the last time. By 54, Justinian's forces finally win. But victory feels hollow. Italy lies devastated. The imperial government in Ravenna controls what's left. But Rome isn't even the capital anymore. Byzantine officials care more about taxes than rebuilding. The city you knew continues fading. Then, in 568, just 14 years after the Gothic War's end, you hear terrifying news. A new Germanic tribe, called the Lombards, pours into northern Italy. They're fiercer than the Goths, less civilized, more destructive. They conquer city after city. The Byzantines can't stop them. Within a few years, Lombards control most of Italy. Only narrow strips along the coasts remain Byzantine, including a corridor connecting Ravenna to Rome. You're trapped in this isolated pocket, cut off from the wider world. The Pope becomes more important now. With no strong secular ruler nearby, bishops handle negotiations, food distribution, defense. You notice people looking to the church for leadership in ways they never did before. Rome transforms from an imperial capital into something else entirely. A spiritual center struggling to survive between two hostile powers. The cold stone floor presses against your knees as you kneel inside St. Peter's Basilica on Christmas Day in the year 800. Pope Leo III stands above you with a golden crown held high. The air smells of incense and candle wax. Your breath makes small clouds in the winter chill. You're witnessing something that will change Rome forever. Charles, King of the Franks, bows his head. The Pope places the crown on him. The crowd roars. To Charles Augustus, crowned by God, great and pacific Emperor of the Romans, life and victory. Charlemagne rises as the first emperor in the West since 476. Rome has an emperor again, though he rules from faraway Aachen, not from the Seven Hills. You walk through the city in these decades and see how much has changed. Rome isn't the marble capital of ancient times anymore. Goats graze in the old forum. Weeds grow between broken columns. The population has dropped to maybe 30,000 people, but the Pope's power grows stronger each year. The Papal States now stretch across central Italy. Popes rule not just as spiritual leaders, but as temporal princes with armies and territories. You watch papal officials collect taxes settle disputes, and govern towns from Ravenna to Rome. The donation of Constantine, a document claiming Emperor Constantine gave these lands to the Pope centuries ago, justifies this power. You don't know yet that scholars will later prove it's a forgery. Rome becomes a pilgrimage destination. You see travelers arriving from England, France, and Germany. They come to pray at St. Peter's tomb and visit the catacombs. The city survives on these pilgrims and on papal administration. The centuries pass, and you witness constant struggles. Noble families fight for control. The Crescenti and Tusculani families dominate for generations. Popes are sometimes prisoners of these families. Sometimes they're their puppets. In 1084, you feel the ground shake as Norman soldiers attack. They're supposedly rescuing Pope Gregory VII from Emperor Henry IV, but they burn and loot instead. Thousands die. The Lateran palace burns. By the 100s, you notice something new stirring. Roman citizens grow tired of noble and papal control. They remember the ancient Senate. They remember when Romans governed themselves. In 1143, they establish a commune, a self-governing body. The Capitoline Hill becomes their center of power again after centuries of abandonment. The medieval commune doesn't last long against papal authority, but you sense the tension building between Rome's ancient republican dreams and its present reality. The chill of morning mist clings to your face as you stand in the Lateran courtyard, watching Pope Paschal II pace before the gates. It's 1111, and the clash between popes and emperors over who appoints bishops has turned Rome into a battlefield of words and swords. You've seen 3 popes in your lifetime already, each fighting the same struggle for control. The investiture controversy tears at the fabric of Christian Europe. Emperors claim the right to invest bishops with ring and staff, symbols of spiritual authority. Popes declare this a sin, an invasion of sacred territory. In Rome, you feel the tension in every street corner argument, every sermon, every armed standoff between papal guards and imperial supporters. Your neighbor's son joined the commune last year. These new civic organizations spring up across Italy, groups of citizens swearing oaths to govern themselves. Rome's commune forms in 1143, declaring independence from both Pope and Emperor. You watch as senators meet in the ancient capital, trying to revive the glory of the old republic. They call themselves the Senate and People of Rome, using words that haven't held power for 1,000 years. Arnold of Brescia arrives preaching reform. He stands in the forum, dust rising from his sandals, calling for the church to abandon wealth and temporal power. Crowds gather around him. You listen, torn between his passionate words and your loyalty to the papacy. The Pope flees Rome. Arnold's followers control the city for nearly a decade. But Frederick Barbarossa marches south in 1155. You hear the rumble of his army before you see it. German voices echoing off ancient walls. Arnold is captured, hanged, and burned. His ashes are thrown into the Tiber, so no relics remain. The emperor restores the pope, but demands his own coronation in return. The Concordat of Worms in 1122 had tried to settle investiture disputes, separating spiritual and temporal authority. Yet here in Rome, the questions never truly end. Who rules this city? Pope, emperor, senator, or commune? Noble families build tower fortresses throughout Rome. The Frangipane, Pirlioni, Orsini, and Colonna turn neighborhoods into private strongholds. You walk through streets, shadowed by these towers, some rising 12 stories high. When families feud, they hurl stones and arrows across the narrow lanes. You learn which routes to avoid during conflicts. Churches rise amid the chaos. Santa Maria in Trastevere gleams with new mosaics. San Clemente is rebuilt over its ancient foundations. Pilgrims still come, seeking the tombs of Peter and Paul, walking through a city that can't decide its own destiny. The metallic clang of church bells echoes across Rome as you stand in an emptying piazza. It's 1309, and you're watching something unthinkable happen. Pope Clement V isn't coming back. He's staying in France, in a city called Avignon. The successor of St. Peter has abandoned Rome. You walk through streets that feel hollower each year. Grass grows between the paving stones. Ancient monuments crumble without anyone to repair them. The great families, the Colonna, the Orsini, fight each other in the ruins. Their private armies turn neighborhoods into battlefields. Without the Pope's court, there's no money, no pilgrims, no purpose. 7 popes rule from Avignon over 70 years. You hear people call them prisoners of the French king. The city you love becomes a shadow. Population drops to maybe 17,000 people. Cattle graze in the Forum. Wolves prowl near the Lateran at night. The Colosseum serves as a fortress for one family, then another. In 1377, hope flickers. Pope Gregory XI returns to Rome. You line the streets with thousands of others, weeping as his procession enters the city. But he dies within a year. The cardinals gather in 1378 to choose his successor. You can hear the Roman crowds outside the conclave, shouting, demanding an Italian pope. They elect Urban VI. Then everything splits apart. French cardinals claim the election was forced, invalid. They choose their own pope, Clement VII, who flees back to Avignon. Now there are 2 popes. Both claim to be the true successor of Peter. Both excommunicate each other. Christendom fractures down the middle. France, Scotland, Castile follow Avignon. England, Germany, most of Italy follow Rome. You stand in St. Peter's Square, confused and angry. Which pope do you obey? Priests in your parish argue. Some leave for Avignon, others stay. The schism poisons everything. It's not about theology or faith anymore. It's about politics, money, power. The years drag on. 2 popes become 3 in 1409, when cardinals try to fix the crisis, but only make it worse. The church tears itself apart while you watch. Rome struggles to matter in a world where even Christ's vicar is disputed. The scent of fresh plaster and pigment fills the air as you stand beneath Michelangelo's scaffolding in the Sistine Chapel. Pope Julius II has summoned the greatest artists of your age to transform Rome from a medieval ruin into a showcase of divine glory. You watch the master paint God's finger reaching toward Adam, and you understand this is more than decoration. This is power made visible. Julius calls himself the warrior pope, and he's not wrong. He rides into battle wearing armor, reclaiming papal territories lost during the troubled years. But his real conquest happens here in Rome, where he commissions Bramante to rebuild St. Peter's Basilica from its ancient foundations. The old church, standing since Constantine's time, comes down stone by stone. Julius wants something grander, something that will eclipse every church in Christendom. You see Raphael painting in the Vatican Palace rooms, his frescoes showing philosophy and theology in perfect harmony. The school of Athens depicts Plato, and Aristotle walking together, surrounded by ancient thinkers. This is what the Renaissance means in Rome: classical wisdom and Christian faith united under papal patronage. When Leo X becomes Pope in 1513, he brings a different style. He's a Medici from Florence, and he loves luxury. God has given us the papacy, he supposedly says. Let us enjoy it. He continues funding St. Peter's construction, but he needs money, lots of it. So he sells indulgences, certificates promising reduced time in purgatory for the dead. You can buy forgiveness, the preachers say, and help build God's greatest church at the same time. In Germany, a monk named Martin Luther nails his complaints to a church door. He says the Pope has no right to sell salvation. His protests spread like wildfire across northern Europe. The Reformation has begun, and Rome will never hold the same authority again. Clement VII faces disaster in 1527. Emperor Charles this unpaid troops, mostly German Lutherans and Spanish Catholics, march on Rome seeking plunder. You hear them coming before you see them. Thousands of hungry, angry soldiers who haven't been paid in months. The Pope flees through a secret passage to Castel Sant'Angelo as the troops pour through the gates. For 9 months they occupy Rome, killing, looting, burning. Churches become stables. Convents become brothels. The Renaissance dream drowns in blood and ashes. When the soldiers finally leave, Rome lies devastated. But the popes rebuild again. They always rebuild. The morning light filters through shattered stained glass as you stand in what remains of a Roman church. It's May 1527, and the screams have finally stopped. Swiss and German mercenaries loyal to Emperor Charles V stormed the city 6 days ago, and Rome has become hell on earth. You step carefully over broken marble. Bodies lie in the streets outside. The soldiers haven't been paid in months, and they're taking everything they can carry: gold chalices, silk vestments, ancient manuscripts. Nothing is sacred anymore. You watch a lance-necked soldier wearing a cardinal's red hat, laughing as he drinks wine stolen from a monastery cellar. Pope Clement VII fled to Castel Sant'Angelo when the attack began. He's trapped there now, watching his city burn. The Swiss Guard died almost to the last man defending him. Their blood still stains the steps of St. Peter's. You hear German voices singing Lutheran hymns as they loot. Many of these soldiers follow Martin Luther's teachings, and they see this as divine punishment for papal corruption. They've stabled their horses in churches. They've used holy paintings for target practice. Some have scrawled, "Luther is Pope," on Vatican walls. The sack lasts for months. Tens of thousands die from violence, disease, and starvation. Rome's population drops from 55,000 to perhaps 10,000. Entire neighborhoods stand empty. Grass grows in the Forum again, just like it did after the Goths came. This disaster changes everything. The Renaissance, that glorious rebirth of art and learning, ends here in blood and ashes. The popes who survive become more cautious, more defensive. They've seen what happens when worldly power matters more than spiritual authority. You walk through the Borgo district near the Vatican. Every building has been ransacked. Raphael's students fled or died. The workshops that produced such beauty stand silent. The confidence that built St. Peter's Basilica has shattered like the windows around you. When the soldiers finally leave in February 1528, they take Rome's treasures with them. But they leave something behind. Proof that even the eternal city can fall. The Reformation that began in distant Germany has scarred Rome's very stones, and the Catholic Church will never be quite the same. The clang of church bells echoes through narrow streets as you stand in Piazza del Popolo on a February morning in 1798. French troops march past you in tight formation. Their boots strike the cobblestones in rhythm. Napoleon's army has arrived, and Rome's old order crumbles around you. You watch as soldiers tear down papal symbols from public buildings. The Pope flees south to exile. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Rome isn't the center of Catholic power. The French declare a Roman Republic, but it doesn't last. Within months, different armies fight over the city. You see Austrian troops, then Neapolitan forces, then French again. Napoleon crowns himself emperor in 1804. By 1809, he annexes Rome directly into his empire. Your city becomes just another French department. He calls it the second city of his realm after Paris. French officials redesign streets and catalog ancient monuments. They strip artworks and ship them north to the Louvre. But Napoleon's empire collapses. In 1814, you watch French soldiers retreat. The Pope returns in triumph. Everything seems to go backward. The papal government restores old laws and old ways. Yet something has changed in people's hearts. You hear whispers in cafes and marketplaces. Young men talk about Italia, about unification, about freedom. Secret societies meet in hidden rooms. The Carbonari spread revolutionary ideas. In 1848, revolution sweeps across Europe. You join crowds demanding a constitution. Pope Pius IX flees, disguised as a simple priest. A Roman Republic rises again under Giuseppe Mazzini and Giuseppe Garibaldi. You stand on the Janiculum Hill in 1849 as Garibaldi's volunteers fight French troops sent to restore the Pope. Cannonballs whistle overhead. The Republic falls after bitter fighting, but the dream doesn't die. For 2 decades more, you live under restored papal rule. But outside Rome, Italy unifies piece by piece. Victor Emmanuel becomes king. His minister Cavalli orchestrates diplomatic victories. Garibaldi conquers the south with his 1,000 red shirts. By 1870, only Rome remains outside the new Italian kingdom. French troops still protect the Pope. Then France goes to war with Prussia and recalls its garrison. On September 20th, Italian artillery opens fire at Porta Pia. The wall crumbles. Soldiers pour through the breach. You watch the Italian flag rise over the Quirinal Palace. Rome becomes Italy's capital in 1871. The Pope retreats into the Vatican, declaring himself a prisoner. Your ancient city transforms once more into a national capital. The sharp crack of boots on cobblestone echoes through the street as columns of black shirts march toward the capital. You stand at your window in October 1922, watching thousands of men flood into Rome. They're not soldiers, not officially, but they carry clubs and wear identical uniforms. Benito Mussolini's march on Rome doesn't meet resistance. King Victor Emmanuel III refuses to sign martial law. Instead, he invites Mussolini to form a government. The transformation happens quickly. By 1925, Mussolini declares himself Il Duce, the leader. Democratic institutions crumble. Opposition newspapers close. Political enemies disappear into exile or prison. You watch Rome change under fascist rule. New buildings rise in stark, imposing styles. Mussolini dreams of a new Roman Empire, comparing himself to Augustus. He orders archaeologists to excavate the imperial forums, tearing down medieval neighborhoods to expose ancient ruins. The regime reshapes the city's fabric. Via dei Fori Imperiali cuts through archaeological sites, built for military parades. EUR, a planned district south of the city, begins construction for a 1942 World's Fair that never happens. Massive inscriptions praising Mussolini appear on ancient monuments. The fascist government signs the Lateran Treaty in 1929, finally resolving the Roman question. Vatican City becomes an independent state, ending 60 years of conflict between church and state. But Mussolini's imperial ambitions lead to disaster. Italy invades Ethiopia in 1935, Albania in 1939. When World War II begins, Mussolini allies with Hitler. You feel the city's anxiety growing. In 1940, Italy enters the war. At first, propaganda promises quick victory. Reality proves different. Italian armies suffer defeats in Greece and North Africa. By 1943, Allied bombers appear over Rome. You hear air raid sirens wailing across the city. Explosions shake the San Lorenzo district in July, killing over 1,000 people. The Basilica of San Lorenzo su Fuori le Mura suffers severe damage. Pope Pius XII walks through the rubble, his white robes stained with blood and dust. That same month, the fascist Grand Council turns against Mussolini. The king orders his arrest. Rome erupts in celebration, but joy doesn't last long. Germany occupies the city in September. Mussolini, rescued by German commandos, establishes a puppet state in northern Italy. Rome enters its darkest period. German soldiers patrol the streets. The Gestapo takes over Via Tasso, turning it into a torture center. Jewish Romans face deportation. On October 16, SS troops raid the Jewish ghetto, seizing over 1,000 people. The sharp crack of a tram bell cuts through the morning air as you step onto Via del Corso. It's 2026, and Rome hums with life that would astonish anyone from a century ago. The post-war rubble is long gone, replaced by cafes, where tourists tap on phones beneath ancient arches. You walk past the Vittoriano, that massive white monument to Italian unity. Street vendors sell bottled water near fountains that have flowed for 2,000 years. The city breathes through layers. Metro tunnels run beneath imperial forums. Fiber optic cables thread through medieval walls. The Republic, born in 1946, has weathered storms. You remember the years of lead in the 1970s, when terrorism shook Italy's streets. Political scandals in the 1990s toppled old parties. Economic crises tested European unity, yet Rome endures, as it always has. The economic boom that rebuilt Italy after 1945 transformed this ancient capital. Factories rose in the northern suburbs. Highways circled the historic center. The 1960 Olympics brought the world here. Athletes racing through streets where chariots once thundered. By the 1980s, Rome had become a modern European capital while keeping its soul intact. You pause in Piazza Navona, built over Domitian's Stadium. Tourists photograph Bernini's fountains. A street artist sketches the church facade. Nearby, archaeologists work carefully beneath a construction site, finding another layer of the past. Every building project here becomes a dig, revealing walls and pottery from forgotten centuries. The Vatican still draws millions. Pilgrims cross the Tiber, as they have for 2 millennia. The Pope speaks to crowds in St. Peter's Square. His words broadcast worldwide instantly. Religion and politics still intertwine here, though the Papal States are long gone. You think about what makes Rome eternal. Not its monuments alone, though they stand magnificent. Not its power, which has risen and fallen, and risen again. It's something else, the way each generation builds upon what came before, never quite erasing the past. The sun warms the travertine stones as you walk toward the Colosseum. Tourists line up for entry. Guides explain gladiators in a dozen languages. The structure has survived earthquakes, looters, and centuries of neglect. It stands because Romans kept coming back, kept caring, kept building. You're standing in a city that began with shepherds on a hill. It grew into an empire that shaped the world. It fell, rebuilt, fell again, and rebuilt once more. Through republic and kingdom and empire and republic again. Through triumph and disaster, Rome remains. The city teaches a simple truth. Nothing lasts forever, but some things endure through change itself.